Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Upper Deck from Pinstripe Chronicles. If you follow the regular shows on Sunday mornings at 11, you know that in honor of Women's History Month, we've been highlighting women in baseball, past and present. And I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up this month than by inviting these two amazing and accomplished women in baseball, historians, in fact. They're with me tonight to share their vast knowledge and their remarkable mission to expand opportunities for girls and women around the globe who are striving for their rightful presence in baseball. And it's my honor to introduce them to you now. Dr. Kat Williams is the CEO of the International Women's Baseball Center, and she's a professor of women's sports history at Marshall University. And she's the founding president of the International Women's Baseball Center, also referred to as IWBC. So get used to that acronym. You're going to be hearing it a lot. And Kat's also the author of several articles about women's sports, including a useful category of analysis, and two books, The All-American Girls After the AAG PBL, and Isabel Lefty Alvarez, The Improbable Life of a Cuban-American Baseball Star. Through teaching, scholarship, and advocacy, Kat is dedicated to the preservation of women's sports history and helping girls become independent, confident leaders. Dr. Leslie Heaphy is the president of IWBC, and she's an associate professor of history at Kent State at Stark and a lifelong Mets fan. Her favorite baseball memory is the Mets winning the World Series in 1986. How about that Game 7 in Flushing?
Absolutely.
I remember it well. Her projects include a number of books edited, written about the Negro Leagues and women's baseball. Leslie has been the chair of the Society for American Baseball Research, known as SABR, that of the Women in Baseball Committee there since 1995. So welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lynn. We appreciate
Great to be here.
Yes, I've been really looking forward to this, and really looking forward to learning so much from you both tonight. But I want to start talking about you. Have you always been a fan of baseball? What got you into baseball? And anyone, jump in.
Yep, go ahead, Kat.
Really didn't have a choice. Both my parents were big baseball fans, and I remember as a small kid listening to the Cincinnati Reds on the radio. We didn't have a TV at the time. Wade Hoyt was calling the games, and it's almost as if it was just part of breathing, part of life. And so I grew up having an interest in it, and sort of absorbed it, learned it at a pretty early age. But then I realized I was actually pretty good at playing it. Back then, of course, that was long before Title IX. I didn't have a lot of opportunities to play, but I did. And my story is very similar to so many other women. I played in the neighborhood with the boys, and that kind of thing. So I am still a Cincinnati Reds fan, and just a big fan of the game and all that it brings. Baseball is not just Major League Baseball. Baseball is from, literally from the ground up, and there's just no better game. And it's just always been part of my life.
Well, yeah.
Leslie?
My story is slightly different from Kat's, only in the fact that people are always surprised to find out I never played. That was not part of my. I've discovered very early on that my eye-hand coordination is not the greatest, and so
I can relate.
Playing was never really but my dad was a huge baseball fan. He played in college and things, and so grew up. Similarly, we watched on TV, but whenever we went anywhere, Dad always took his radio with him. And I remember, and you'll appreciate this, Lynn, because you know the area, going up to the Beaverkill River, and we would be playing for a picnic and things. We did that regularly. And Dad would set up the radio on the picnic table, and you could hear it all over the
Oh,
campsite.
Great.
So we were, and so that's the question. Dad was a huge Yankees fan. I ended up a Mets fan, and I think there's a couple of reasons. One of them I remember thinking and saying when I was little that I thought Judge Steinbrenner was a mean man, and so I didn't want to like the Yankees.
you weren't wrong, depending on who
And
you ask.
so that was part of it. And then I have to admit, one of my older brothers was a big hockey fan, and so it always came down to we could watch the Yankees because Dad liked that, or we could watch hockey. And so if I didn't get a chance to, and so I was blamed by, and that I think fueled my interest in the Mets to say I'm going to be different. And so I grew up watching, and have never really not watched, and it just allowed me to mix my interest in history and baseball together, and so that's what I have done. And I always tell people, my students in particular, I'm incredibly lucky that I can go to a basketball game, baseball game, any of those kind of things, any baseball game, and I'm kind of working because I can use it in class, and not too many people can say
Job,
that all the
Leslie.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty, it is, and it's been quite an adventure along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where mine comes from. But I I barely played slow pitch softball with friends. That was about as far as it got.
It's remarkable how life set you up for exactly where you are. It's remarkable how that happens, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so just listening to both of you, it seems like the most natural progression in the world, regardless of how you got there. Who were your
Yeah.
baseball heroes back in the day? For the Reds and for the Mets. Um, did you
Well,
have a favorite?
yeah, I did. I have quite a few from just the Mets alone, but because of the time frame when I was growing up, I learned later that he was not a nice person, and I didn't know this as a little kid. So you have to bear that in mind when I tell you one of them, because it was Dave Kingman.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And yeah, he had, but I just thought it was so cool that he could hit the home runs, and you knew that he was either going to strike out or he's going to hit a home run. And
Yeah.
I remember in particular the game where he hit, and I was fairly little, the ball up into the Astrodome, and it never came back down. And I'm sitting there with my brothers, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" I thought it had gone, and they let me think that it had been hit some who knows where, but it didn't come back
Still
down. So I thought
going.
that was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
They blew it
And
That's
for
then
you?
awesome.
They they told you the truth eventually? That was mean.
I figured it out. I don't remember
Oh.
them telling. Maybe they did. I doubt it,
Yeah.
knowing them. But so Dave Kingman, and then I was also a big Tom Seaver fan.
Yeah.
It's hard not to,
Tom Terrific.
yes. And
Yeah.
Well, and
then
we have that in common.
yes, yes.
So
And then
yeah,
Nolan Ryan was only there for a short time, but
right.
Yeah.
when he was with the Mets, and then of course you got it with the '86 Mets and that whole Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry. It's hard not to, and Gary Carter, the kid,
Yep.
and then more recently, of course, Jake DeGrom, and sadly he left. But
Right. Right. Well, so a quick Tom Seaver anecdote from my childhood. My Mets fan sister, that was her crush. And so we had a little corner store, and it was like a deli, and the RC Cola man set up a like life-size cutout of Tom Seaver in front of the RC Colas in the Superette. And so, when the promotion was over, my sister, begged the owner of the shop to give it to her. And so, she had it in the bedroom until she like was of age and moved out. But I have to tell you, whenever I got to sleep in my sister's room with them, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be the shadow. And
It's
it would like
hysterical.
scare the crap out of me. And
That's too funny.
that's
yeah.
awesome.
That
That's
is too
awesome.
funny. Uh,
What so Kat, what about you? Any Reds
well,
strike a chord for you?
oh yeah, and we won't even go into whether or not this person is a good person, but I was a Pete Rose fan, and still, no one played the game like Pete. Um, and Pete was a rookie in the early '60s, and so was Johnny Bench, and
Yeah.
so those were the guys, right? Like
Yep.
and then eventually, as we moved into the '70s, of course, the Big Red Machine. Um,
Hmm.
but I too was a big Tom Seaver fan. His no hitter was as a Cincinnati Red,
Right. Yeah, I
and
know. Because we
Oh,
only have one no hitter
yeah.
in entire Mets history, and it wasn't. Yeah, we never got
oh,
but
one until you.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I was a
but yeah,
George Foster
you know,
fan. We got Foster from
yeah,
your Big Red
that's right,
Machine.
that's
So,
right, yeah, and
but I do not like Pete Rose, mostly because of what he did to Buddy Harrelson.
yeah, I know, but
So
again,
that sounds like
and the thing is, I, as an adult, it's easy to look back on that stuff and think, oh, come on, but as a kid, you're like,
oh yeah,
oh, he was playing a game, well, it was an all-star game, right? So, but yeah, also there's something to be said for that, youth and being able to sort of be blinded by who people really are, and because a lot of my big baseball, the guys that who were not Reds, whether it was Mickey Mantle or whoever, those guys, I didn't care who they were as people, and we didn't actually know as much back then,
that's right.
very
so
true, very
um,
true.
Very true.
but yeah, I just I used to tell my students, we got our first television when the Reds went to the playoff, and we got our first color television when they went back, and that's the kind of fans my parents were, and it was both my parents. It was both my mom and my dad.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and Leslie, as you're sitting in Cooperstown literally right now,
Yep.
um,
yeah,
the conversation will never stop about whether Pete should be in or not.
yeah,
No, in
And it's
fact, we
very
were just having that conversation at lunch today with some people that were sitting.
it's very hard to separate the man from the player.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
to your
Yep.
point, Kat, right? And
yeah,
so,
right,
by as a player, 1,000,000,000%, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but does what happened when he was a manager and beyond, does that negate and really
yeah,
disqualify? And it's going to be interesting.
yeah. And,
You
and
know,
I honestly, as much of a fan as I am of Pete when he was playing, I'll be the first to tell you. I mean, not a nice person. At least, I mean, I don't know him personally, but certainly it doesn't appear that way. And yet, we have a hard time finding any of those guys currently in the hall who are unblemished, and some of them in some pretty
Yeah.
awful ways.
Well, it's the
Um,
reminder to us that they're people. I mean, and
exactly,
as people,
exactly.
we are not
Yeah,
perfect, and we make mistakes,
right.
and
Right,
it's a question of what kinds of mistakes and what do we do when we make those mistakes. That's the
right,
important thing.
and that's where he messed up, the in terms of getting in the hall.
Mhm.
He could have handled that whole thing a lot differently,
Mhm.
and I think would have probably, well, maybe gotten into the Hall of Fame, but at least if he had handled it a little differently. I don't know, my father, die hard, I told him, if they put Pete in the Hall of Fame, I'm taking you. I don't care if I have to push you in a wheelchair out to the South 40, we're going. But there are, when you start to really think about all that goes into that, it's
Mhm.
a
yeah,
tough one. I
Yeah.
it's tough, but
it
who
is.
he was on the field, on the diamond, second to none.
Right. That's
Yeah,
right. And I don't
yeah.
think we're there yet in terms of
No,
separating the two.
no, I don't either.
Because character does matter.
Yeah,
These guys and women more and more,
yeah,
are role models. And
right.
so it's going to be
Yeah,
interesting to see how society evolves with that.
yeah,
Mhm.
Um,
yeah. And I
right.
think there just has to be a level of consistency with that too.
Yes.
And so I'm never going to be the one I'm not
Right.
dying on that cross, right? I mean,
Right.
because I really, I get it. But I know as a kid, there was never anyone that played the game like he did. And that's what I appreciated, right? That hustle. That's what I appreciated.
Right. Right. And that's being a role model as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this is Tats, our leader for Pinstripe Chronicles. That the younger generation might not really understand the impact of his actions had on the game and trust that was broken.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
So quick pivot then, now that we've talked about some men, I think it's probably a safe bet that everyone listening, whether now or later, know at least a little bit something about women in baseball from watching a league of their own. Um, but you're both historians with a capital H. So let's open up the floor to your knowledge about the history of women in baseball and its trailblazers. Just go for it. Enrich us.
I was like,
Well, I think the most important thing for people to realize is something that Kat and I always tell that women have always been a part of the game, and so the idea that they're new or this is something it's not. But that's what history is too. Everybody thinks everything's new, and it's like no, you just need to know something about history. And when you think about women's participation from this country's standpoint, it goes back to the very earliest beginnings of the game in this country. I mean, you can talk about England and what was going because women were playing at the very origins of the game there too. But in this country, certainly, from the very earliest days, because I always remind people, do you really think that boys had a monopoly on liking to go out and play with a bat and ball? Of course not, right? But when you're talking the more organized, we start to see it develop same time that the men's game did after the Civil War for the same kinds of reasons, right? We also know that for the same kinds of reasons that others were left out and pushed to the sort of exterior of the game that happens to women, but it starts really at the college game. And whether it's talking about Vassar and the Vassar Resolutes in the 1860s and 70s, who set the stage for all the other college teams that come along. That's really where it starts for most women, is with those college teams, whether they were playing sort of unorganized a lot of times amongst themselves. So kind of like today, you might have freshmen playing seniors and juniors play, right? That kind of thing. That's where it all really starts. And these were women who were up against society's attitudes that said, you're not supposed to be doing this. And so that part hasn't changed either, right up to the present day, that there's this sense, and as you move forward, the idea that baseball was a male sport and not a women's sport just gets solidified with the professionalization of the game, the idea that it's America's national pastime. But it didn't stop women from playing. So when you look at the 19th century, you've got all the college teams that are playing, and then you have what were called before you move into the 20th century, the sort of more traveling kinds of teams, often just simply referred to as the Reds and the Whites. Right? Purely because of the color of their socks, the belts they wore. And they were not generally more identified than that. So you might read that there's a Philadelphia Reds or the Philadelphia Whites, and there's two Philadelphia Red teams. I don't know who they are, but the Reds and Whites. And some of those teams were more for entertainment than otherwise. But again, that's because of the attitude of the 19th century. But there's a lot of them. And then you add in the individual players who are playing. And of course, you can't talk about the 19th century without throwing in the Dolly Vardens, the professional black women's teams playing in. And there were two Dolly Varden teams.
Mm-hmm.
And a third team in Philadelphia, women's team called the Captain Jinks. So all three of those teams were playing 1883 and 1884. So we know that women of all ilks were playing, right, and participating. And so the 19th century is full of those stories. You get the great story of Lizzie Arlington at the end of the 19th century playing in a minor league baseball game in Reading, Pennsylvania, and so and then that gradually transitions into the much more real baseball and solid baseball being played by the Bloomer Girl teams, starting at the late end of the 19th century all the way into the 1930s. And so you've got, and then beyond the playing side of things, you get umpires and you get owners and you get all kinds of things that get thrown into the mix. As I see Perry just put in the chat about Jen Powell, who's umpiring now in spring training, but our first female umpire is Amanda Clement in the first decade of the 1900s, and the story then moves forward to what everybody knows, which is the All-American League. But prior to that, I mean, you've got Maud Nelson, you've got Alta Weiss, you've got Bloomer Girl teams everywhere. You've got Lizzie Murphy. There's just, and then you've got other African American women playing and early on that played against the Negro Leagues on black men's teams that people just don't know were out there. And then that brings you to somebody that Kat loves to talk about, of course, which is the Philadelphia Bobbies and Edith Houghton. So take it away, Kat.
Well, I mean, Edith Houghton is really someone. If any of your listeners have heard of her, she was known as the Kid. She played from age 10. She was the shortstop on the Philadelphia Bobbies. They are the team that, again, part of that barnstorming tradition. They went to Japan on a tour, at first all women's tour, and it turned out to be quite a disaster. And in fact, the supporters who were funding it backed out. They were stranded in Japan, and ultimately one of the young women died en route back home. That is a very short-handed version of that story. But one of the reasons it's important, not just Edith, because she was a fantastic ball player and went on to become the first female scout, major league scout. She was a scout for the Philadelphia Phillies. Now there was another one. She was a scout with her husband. Edith was the first one. Yeah, Edith was the first one hired on her own as a scout. And so what Edith Houghton's story does, which is that this is one of the things I love about all of this, is that it shows that continuum. It's you have some people who were players for a short period, or umpires, or owners, or whatever. But for so many women, baseball was their lifeline. Baseball, it morphed and changed depending on the time, depending on what they could do and they couldn't do. She could no longer play at the level that she did. And eventually during World War II, she joined the Waves. So they realized she was a good ball player. So she played for the Waves. She put together and coached a men's team for the Waves, or for the Navy. And so then after World War II, she got out of the military, but then during Korea, they asked her back. So she went back in. In the middle of all of that, though, she becomes the first female professional scout. And so, again, I'm skipping a lot of things here, but the point is this continuum, this thing that women have been part of the game always, and for some women throughout their lives, and in different capacities, in the same way that is true for men and boys. It has been, the game has been a thread that has run through their lives. And the very same thing is true.
Yeah, Maud Nelson is another good example of
Exactly.
that. Because Maud Nelson was a player, a manager, and then an owner, and she was involved in the game for over 30 years on all those different capacities from early 1900s into the 1930s. And people have begun to try to, and in fact, I was talking about this at the hall today, that it would be really cool to actually put together a map to trace not only where she traveled, but all the players that she impacted and how they continue on, because it would be.
Perry's done a lot of that work.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting to see just where that impact goes.
Right.
in
Right.
terms of that, and that another illustration of what Kat is talking about. That the game, and then we've talked about you throw in owners as well, and we tend to think about some of the more recent women who are owners, starting with, of course, my Mets, because Joan Payson has actually a rather unique part of that history, but it goes back to Helene Britton with St. Louis in the 19 teens, and then you've got people like Olivia Taylor in the 20s for the Negro Leagues, Effa Manley, of course, who is the only woman to date, unfortunately, been elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame when she got elected in 2006.
Wow.
And she's a good example, I think, of what we're talking about too, Kat, because with Effa, she starts as a baseball fan. She never played, but
Right.
she is involved with ownership of a
Mhm.
team, and then all of the aspects from the 1930s till she sells the team right before the 1950 season, in every aspect. And then she uses that platform to promote civil rights and all of this. And so, which I think is another aspect that sometimes gets overlooked, is the realization that many of them have, that sometimes it may be a smaller platform than maybe they still have a platform, and they're able to use that for things beyond just baseball as well, which makes them leaders, role models, all of those kinds of things. And certainly Effa fits in that category. But
Right.
and then Joan Payson, as I mentioned, of the Mets, just got on the ownership. She's unique because she's one of the only women who ever bought a team outright with her own money without having to inherit it from her father or her husband, or
Yep.
run the team with her husband, because her husband wasn't all that interested in baseball. He was much more interested in horse racing and things. So,
Yeah.
these are all interesting parts of that story.
Well, and I would like to add, and this is a piece of this that's really important to me, and it's that some of the most significant women in baseball are probably the names we don't know. And the reason I say, and that's not to say the ones we've talked about aren't significant, because of course they are. But my point is that, the millions, literally millions of girls and women who have been on the field, who have kept score, or helped tend the fields, or umpired games, or taught their brothers how to pitch, or
Yes.
whatever it is. They have been part of the game, and therefore the game has been part of them. And when the game is part of you, and this could be true of some other sport, maybe. But when the game is part of you, you take with it the lessons you learn, and that is one of the reasons that was one of the primary goals of the IWBC. Girls and women need to have an opportunity. They need to have an opportunity to be on that field, to learn everything that boys and men have learned from that game from the beginning of the game. And so for me, it's about including those important women in baseball history. We got to do that. But it's also about, the literally millions of girls and women whose lives have been changed because of the game.
Well, for
And
every one we know, there's 100 we don't know,
that's
or
right.
1,000 that we don't know, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
unfortunate. That
Yep.
they're part of what makes this tapestry
Yep.
of the game, and that's just here in this country, because it's also
Oh yeah.
a worldwide
Yeah.
game for women as well. And so when you start to throw in that history as well, you really start to see the vast number of women that have participated
Oh yeah.
since the very beginnings of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you've both done has given me a perfect pivot, because
Okay.
let's dig into that IWBC.
All
And
right.
and by the way, that I deserves like bold italic, because this is a global mission that you're undertaking.
Yep. That's right.
So, and that stretching inclusivity that,
Yep.
threatens to become ubiquitous, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then just sort of conflated, but
Yep.
you're taking it and you're broadening it. So let's talk about the IWBC
Okay.
historians. So how did it begin and why?
Well, the why is in large part because Maybelle Blair and Shirley Berkovich and Jane Moffitt and Karen Kunkel, all former players from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, had been talking for years about the fact that there was no home for women's baseball. Cooperstown is the National Baseball Hall of Fame, but it is about professional baseball for the most part. It's not that they don't include others, they do. Williamsport is a home for Little League baseball. Well, where's the home for women's baseball? And so we had been talking about this for a long time. Finally, after years of frustration, about 6 or 8 of us sat around Maybelle Blair's living room over pizza and beer, and we said, enough. There's nobody's going to do this for us, so we need to do it. So we all threw in $20 or whatever, and we created the International Women's Baseball Center, and we were very deliberate about its name. This is not just about building a museum. This is not just a quote Hall of Fame. This is a center. It is an educational center whose mission is to preserve and protect the history of girls and women in all aspects of baseball internationally. But it's also about using that history to inspire and to show girls that they are part of something bigger. They are not by themselves. They stand on the shoulders of greatness. So this comes together as a museum, an educational center, but also as a field house, an activity center. We are right across the street from Buyer Stadium where the Peaches played. And so all of this is is one big campus. But the IWBC initially was about that. It was, we don't know what this is going to look like exactly. We don't know, where is this home going to be? You have to understand, when we started, we didn't know where this was going to be. We just knew we needed to have a home. Well, fast forward a little bit, and our very own Perry Barber calls me one night, and she was umpiring with Drew Hoffman in at Rockford at Buyer Stadium. They were umpiring a tournament, and someone said, "Hey, do you know any women's baseball organizations that are 501c3 that might be interested in some buildings or in some property?" And so I get this call late at night from Perry saying, "Cat." And so we went to that November at very cold in Rockford. We went to Rockford. They rolled out the red carpet for us. And even though Rockford wasn't our initial goal, we were there about 15 minutes when we realized, of course, it's Rockford. Of course, the home for women's baseball is Rockford, Illinois, where the Peaches played, historically known as the cradle of baseball. And so from roughly 2016 to today, we have worked hard to make a home for girls and women in baseball and to make our home in Rockford. The building is not yet built. We are about to embark on a capital campaign, but there is now a home for women's baseball internationally, and it's Rockford, Illinois.
There's no such thing as coincidences, and you just gave me the chills with that story.
Yeah.
And by the way, happy anniversary, 10th anniversary.
Yes, 10 years.
Here.
Yep.
It's kind of amazing from where we started.
I wasn't gray when we started.
But you wear it so well.
Yeah. That's a lie too, by the way, but
I don't lie. Oh, you mean you were you
Okay. Yeah, no, Kat was saying that she was.
Yeah, I've been this great for a really long time. I'm just kidding. It's been an amazing adventure.
Yeah.
And until a year ago, everything we did with an all volunteer board and committees. Not one person got paid.
Right.
Now, we have since moved. I am now the CEO. Ryan Woodward is our project coordinator. So we do have now 2 staff members, but we got where we are in large part just sheer elbow grease and determination, and with an amazing army of volunteers.
Yeah, and as when Kat says that, they knew within 15 minutes that Rockford was the place. I mean, that has continued to be 100% true. I mean, Rockford, the support that we get there, the support that
Yeah.
they have given to this idea is just incredible. They
Yeah.
come out for everything you want, no matter what it is that we want to do. I mean, last year when we hosted the
Yeah.
USA national team on their way up to Canada to play, I mean, it was an exhibition game and then a practice. But for the exhibition game, we had nearly 1,400 people come out to
Wow.
watch them play,
Yeah.
which, I mean, was better than most of the crowds, sadly, even up in Canada at Thunder Bay for the actual
Right.
trials, because everybody in Rockford shows up when it
Right.
has anything to do with, they're incredibly proud of the history of the Rockford Peaches and that earlier history of baseball in
Right.
Rockford. And so that, there's no doubt that it's in the right place.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, absolutely amazing. And, the cradle of baseball has wrapped its arms around you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. They
and
have.
that couldn't be more telling of how this is all meant to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I
Agreed.
agree. Yeah.
And so 10 years must feel like a flash in the pan. It must feel like, you could still taste the pizza you ate that night. It seems so
Yeah.
short time ago, right? And
Yep.
and by
Right.
the way, Mabel and Hustle are behind me in my background there. I'm terrible
That.
at
Yep,
pointing.
I see him.
I can
Oh,
never get the
yes.
direction right, but
Yep. Yep. Yep.
right there in the corner where my name is,
Right.
are 2
Right.
original AAGPL players and
Mm-hmm.
critical to the IWBC.
Right.
And
Right.
Shirley Berkovic, we know, unfortunately, has left us. But
Yep.
Mabel is still around and very involved. Do you want to say a little bit
Absolutely.
about them and their inspiration as well that was brought to all of this?
Well, we would need an extra podcast probably
Okay, we
to
can do
really.
part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Maybelle Blair and Shirley Berkovich could not have been more different as people. But they were the truest team of just about anyone I've ever witnessed. They complemented one another in many ways. They fussed and fought and disagreed. But when it came down to it, they knew that this project, this mission was something that we had to get done. And and for the right reasons. Shirley often said, I want girls to have the same opportunity that I did. She until she died, the woman was in awe of the opportunity she had to play professional baseball. And for Maybelle, it was very much the same. Blair was and still is someone whose whole life was about pushing that envelope. There's no place to play baseball. Okay, let's make a field. There's no place for girls to play. All right, why don't we go in the 5th grade? In the 5th grade, she went to her 5th grade teacher and said, "My brother's playing baseball, and he's going to this school down the street, and they're playing baseball." She convinced her 5th grade teacher to create a girls' team. Now, she's been doing that her whole life. She still does it. She still calls me on a regular basis. "All right, Williams, while I'm on this side of the grass," I mean, there is this way that you want to then get up and get it done. And so both of them are inspirational. Losing Shirley was devastating. It was devastating to all of us, and I know it was devastating to Blair. But we do it for her. We do it for Shirley. We do it for all the scores of girls and women whose stories need to be preserved and told. But what they do and their influence cannot be overstated.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you talk about both Shirley and Maybelle and other, but they're to your comment earlier, Kat, about sort of this continuum and the impact that baseball had on their lives and changed the trajectory of them is certainly absolutely something that Shirley and Maybelle are very, very aware of, and therefore consciously wanting to say, we want to make sure that others get that same opportunity that they had to do things, to travel all over the country and out of in the 1940s and 50s when women just didn't get a chance to, and to see that opportunity. And both Shirley and Maybelle, they were and still are with Maybelle, the inspiration behind, and the loudest cheering voice all the time is Maybelle.
That's right.
There's as you know, and anybody that's watched her in any of her interview and things that she's done in the recent history, you see that immediately in everything that Maybelle does. This is front and center for her, is something that, and she wants to see it get done.
And Mabel is about what, 98 years old at this?
Just turned 97.
Just
Yeah.
turned 97.
97.
Sorry, Mabel, if you ever listen, I didn't mean to up you by a year.
Yeah, don't add a year.
Yeah. But talk about those shoulders to stand on. And again, another thing meant to be, right? That I mean, it's really not just blazing one trail. It's it's blazing so many, I think. And so we have a comment that I just put up on the screen. It's a two-parter. And 90-second recap. Thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone in the chat, by the way, and those of you watching that aren't on the chat. So he said that, I'm sorry, 90-second recap said that having umpired with and played and coached in games umpired by Drew Hoffman, she's an awesome role model for so many females, including my 13-year-old daughters who play softball and are now beginning umpires. And second, I saw on IG today that the Rockford Rivets are doing 2 Peaches games this season. Are you aware of that?
Oh yeah, we are very much involved with the Rivets. Yeah.
One of them's coming up right here in April 13th, I believe. Is that correct, Kat? Is that the right date?
I don't remember the date.
I think it's the 13th.
Yeah.
I think it's that Saturday. It's that second Saturday.
Yeah, we sport makeup and apparel are the sort of merchandising arm of IWBC, is out at games a lot, out there selling t-shirts, hats, all kinds of things. And the ribbon, mugs like that one.
It is a fine mug. And all proceeds to go to the IWBC, I believe.
That's exactly right. So yes, we will be participating in the Peaches Nights. There's also the Rockford Ice Hogs are doing a baseball night. I believe that's April 6th, and we will be part of that. One of our representatives will be dropping the first puck.
Wow. That's really cool.
That will not be me.
So, again, another like indication of how integrated into the community you are. And how they're supporting you.
That's been also a goal from the very beginning, is understanding the need to not be separate from the community, but to be a part of, and to truly be a part of the community, and to have that opportunity to interact and work with the community. Otherwise this doesn't work. You can't come in and be you can't come in and be an outsider. That just doesn't work at all.
No. And I am in Rockford a lot. I do not live there, although my family thinks maybe that I do. But I am there a lot. And in addition to the fact that the city, the community, and so many individuals are supportive of the IWBC and our project, it does feel like home to me. I am very fortunate to have met and become friends with and colleagues with some of the finest people I've ever known in Rockford, Illinois. And I am very glad that, you know, fate intervened and we ended up in Rockford. This project's going to happen. This building is right now in concept phase, and architect Jeannie Gang is the one who's coming up with that vision for us, and it's just phenomenal. Every time we see these new drawings, every time we see these new ideas, Leslie and I are like, "Oh my God, you know, this is so cool."
Yeah,
And so,
it's
you
going to
know,
be
this
pretty
is going to
spectacular.
happen. Yeah, yeah, it's going to happen.
It all starts with a vision and a mission, and
That's right.
like you said, the elbow grease and the dedicated
Yep,
volunteers, and that
yep,
includes your members and subscribers,
that's right.
etc.
Yep.
So what do we have to look forward to in 2024 in terms of your events and series and games? And is the National Cup going to come through Rockford again? What's going to go on that we could look forward to? And there's probably going to be listeners that aren't all that far away or have car will travel. So what's going
Right.
Yeah,
on?
exactly. Well, we will not, the USA team will not be coming through Rockford this year. Last year, of course, was the stage games. This year they're in the finals. And so they plan not to do as much travel. So their plan is to go directly to Minnesota where they're going to prepare and then on up to Thunder Bay. So they will not be coming through. We are working with Major League Baseball right now to possibly get another play ball event, which if you're not familiar with the play ball events, they are fantastic. They come in, Major League Baseball comes in, and all these kids are there. It's a neighborhood thing. They bring bats and balls for the kids, and they set up all these stations, and it's an amazing thing. So we're working on that. We're also we are in the process right now of focusing on doing some major renovations to Buyer, building bathrooms. You know, that's the thing. It's like none of this stuff is all sexy, but I cannot tell you how excited I am that we're building bathrooms. I have
Well,
learned
remember
more.
how excited we got when we put up the fence
Oh,
and
we
then
put
got
up
it
the
painted
outdoor
green?
fence.
It
I
was
know
like,
we
oh
got
my
it painted
God.
green, and then they painted the numbers on there, and we're like,
Yep.
you know. So we are doing that. We are working right now to get some other upgrades done, including a scoreboard. We are very proud to say that the city of Rockford just agreed to donate $400,000 to upgrades on Buyer. And so that
Wow.
is going to go toward a lot of that, again, not so sexy stuff, right? But we have to do it. If we're going to get those international teams in, you know, I'd love to have a World Cup in Rockford. You know, we've got to upgrade, right? And so that's where we are. We will continue to have all kinds of events and things happening, but that's our focus right now. And then Leslie, you want to talk about the
Yes.
conference and that stuff?
So we also will have this fall in the last weekend in September, virtually, so anybody can join us. It'll be our 6th annual women's baseball conference over that whole weekend with speakers and panels and a great keynote speaker in Jean Fruth, the photographer who has been all over the world photographing literally in recent months women's baseball over, and anybody can submit a proposal if they're got a topic that they want to present at the conference. But it's the nice thing, we made the decision to keep it virtual after having to do it because of the pandemic, of course, simply because of that word international and the whole idea of inclusivity and allowing people to be able to participate,
Yes.
who might not be able to make it if we did it solely right now in Rockford. And so it's and it's the last weekend in September. So that's been a really great conference for us. And we co-host that with Sabre. The society is a joint, again, giving the example of us wanting to constantly work with others and in cooperation with, and they're a great partner to us as well. So that's another big one that we're working on for this fall.
Getting my calendar out and marking that down for sure.
Yep.
Excellent.
Last weekend in September.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. I mean, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it is. We have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And people say you can't online, but we manage to. We've had
We
some great
managed
social
to, yeah.
hours and everything during
That's
it,
right.
even though we're
That's
not
right.
all together. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, you know, maybe 5 years ago would have been much different than it is
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we were
Well, we
talking
learned
about
it was
that a little bit.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
learned
Yeah.
what was possible, and you're like, okay, then we need to take advantage. Well, and as Kat said, you know, when you think about the mission of the IWBC, it fits perfectly with who we are.
Yep.
To allow anybody to participate from anywhere in the world. I mean, that's exactly what we want to see happening with any of our. And so, the more we can do that, that's what we want to be able to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, how can anyone listening get involved with the IWBC?
Oh, wow. There's so many fun ways. Simple, you can become a member and you can go on the website and you can simply join and be a part and participate that way. You can volunteer, and that can be volunteering at events in Rockford or wherever we may have. But we also have lots of committees that are constantly working, and we can always use people who are interested. Everything from working with our library collections to event planning to our social media. I mean, there's something there, I think, for pretty much anybody that wants to.
Right.
And then, of course, you can always donate as well, which, you know, as all of these things, as Kat and I are discovering, we've learned a lot over the last 2 years about building things and the kinds of something as simple as bathrooms. You don't realize what
Yeah.
a task that is to. So those are some of the ways.
Yeah, come on, folks. Get a towel dispenser named after you at Briar.
There you go.
You know,
There you go.
it all
Yep.
matters.
Yep.
Hey,
Naming opportunities are a wonderful thing.
you donate enough money, I'll hand paint your name on the side of the bathroom. That's
I love it. Well, you've given me a few ideas I hadn't thought of to get more involved, and
good. Good.
just even more inspired than I was before we started. And since you're both such, you know, agents of change, you know, in terms of the view for girls and women in baseball, how can our listeners do? What can they do in their own communities to be alongside you in what you're doing to foster inclusion in the game? Any suggestions for, you know, folks out there that might want to start a little grassroots campaign alongside you?
You know, there are about as many ways to do that as there are people. And some of it can be very fundamental in that you have a daughter or a niece or a neighbor, and the little girl wants to play baseball. Don't say to her, "Oh no, you mean softball." You know, so sometimes it's simple. It's that simple. It's about leaving the doors open. It's about saying, well, okay, let's play this or let's play that. So sometimes it really is about being open and using that sort of inclusive language. And sometimes it's a step or two beyond that. Take that kid to Little League, you know, put that kid on the field. And then if that kid is good, or even if they're not, and they want to keep playing, don't let someone tell you that they can't, because they can, and they have, and they will. And so it runs the gamut. But the thing is, be aware,
Right.
you know, be aware of what you're saying, and you know, and just be supportive. If there's a girl on your son's team, that's nothing to get upset about. Be supportive of that. And I think, to me, those are some just really fundamental things that people can do. That's just about being a decent human being.
Mhm. Yeah, it could. I mean, it can also be, you know, so the girl wants to play, but maybe what they need is somebody to step up to be the coach. somebody to
Right.
step up to, and you might say,
Right.
dang, I don't know much about this game, but if that's what they need, I can
Yeah.
figure it out and I can step up and help, right? And we
Yep.
can do those kinds of things. In Rockford today, there's a team called the Little Peaches, right?
Yep.
And that's a bunch of moms that really, that are involved for them, and some dads, but it started with who
Yep.
wanted to give those kinds of opportunities. And so there's so many kids out there that want to play, or maybe they don't want to play, maybe they want to be the one that gets. Why can't instead of having the kid that collects the equipment, it has to be a boy? Why can't it be a girl? Why can't
Right.
it be a girl that's doing the calling of the game, if you've got somebody,
Yep.
right? Or the
Yeah.
mom that wants to do it. And so just from that standpoint, it's just, I would just reiterate what Kat said. I always, we want to continue to sort of treat this as people that want to play, girls that want to play, women that want to get involved and whatever, as an exception. And as long as we continue to treat it as an exception, it's going to stay that way. We have to not talk about it as and see that this is just something, this is just the way it should be. And when we can do that, that's part of that awareness. Just not because as long as you continue to do that, people will see it that way, and they see themselves that way. And so it's a simple thing to just say it's just the normal thing. If they want to play, if they want to announce, if they want to be the groundskeeper, whatever it is, then
Yep.
be there to support them.
It's about access, right? It's
Mhm.
about access, and it's about empowering girls and women, and especially young girls. If you can't imagine something, chances are you're not going to be able to do that. And so,
Mhm.
empowering girls to try to
Yeah.
get on a baseball diamond, a tennis court. I don't care,
Mhm.
but it's showing them they can,
Yeah.
and if they have that interest, showing them that there's a long history. They're not alone. They didn't invent this,
Right.
and that helps. It helps to be part of something.
Well, I mean, every person that we've talked about historically and things, they all had to face those kinds of obstacles, and
Yep.
somebody had to tell them either they needed somebody to support them along the way and their own
Yep.
perseverance. I'm looking at, Tony Stone in your picture back, and Tony
Yeah.
knew that, I mean, she was told by her entire family that they didn't want her to play, and then
Yeah.
found somebody that was supportive enough that gave her some that first opportunity, and away she went with it. Now,
Yep.
you asked earlier our own baseball stories, and I have to admit, I probably wouldn't be. In fact, I know I wouldn't be. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing today if someone had not said to me when I was in grad school, right? I was thinking about a topic, and one of my fellow grad students said to me, "Well, what would you want to write about?" And I said, "Well, baseball," but they're not going to let me do that. And he said, "Why not?"
Yep.
And it was that simple, and I was like, "Oh." So I went and
Yeah.
asked, and sure
Yep.
enough, and so here I am, all these, but that was all it was. It was one part he just said, and that was the
Yeah.
question he said to me, "Why not?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't know, I just assumed I couldn't do it." He said, "Well,
Right.
go ask." And I did. And so it
Isn't that
can be that
great?
simple. It can be just
Isn't that
that
great?
simple.
Wow, that
Sometimes it is that simple.
yeah. I think that's your next T-shirt. Um,
Why
because
not? Yeah.
that's right. We always
Yep.
ask what's your why, and sometimes your why
Mhm.
is why not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
exactly.
Very
I
I
want
powerful.
to,
mean,
if we've got time, I want to say something to this question
Yep,
about
that's
when
why
we're
I
going
put
to.
it up.
All
Yep.
right. Um, First of all,
oh, yeah.
I hope it's a really long time, because if a woman is good enough to try out for a men's team and make it, she darn well better get a chance to try. That's about fairness and equality. I have absolutely no interest in when or how many women are going to play in the major leagues alongside men. I get that all the time when I'm talking to people about how important women's baseball is. Well, I don't know why it matters. Women aren't going to be able to compete with men. I don't care. I could not possibly care less. I mean, getting one woman to play in the major leagues and I'm supposed to be, okay, well, my life work is done now. No, we're bigger than that. We're better than that. It's about providing opportunities for girls and women. Again, if someone's good enough, she better get a chance to try.
And
But let's face
they're
it,
going to be.
and they're going to be. But it's not about that. That's not our goal.
Well,
And,
that
and
goes
when
back to that, Cat. That goes to them. They're still the exception, and that's all we
yeah,
see it as.
right,
So we got the one or two who are,
right,
and yes, they deserve that opportunity. But it's also. I mean, if you talk to most women who do play, their goal is they would like to see a league or
yeah,
leagues, obviously, like
yep,
we once had, that
right,
would give them the opportunity to play against other women, to play the
right,
game the way they can play it, and
right.
just
That's
that's what they want, is that same simple opportunity.
right. I mean, look at the WNBA, and I'm not going to get
Yes.
into a discussion about who funds the WNBA and all
Right.
that. That's not what I'm talking about. The women playing professional basketball against men is going to be really boring. And the thing is, it's self-defeating, right? So for me, the question is, when are we going to have women's baseball leagues?
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Not
We
when
have
we're
women's
going to.
basketball, we have women's soccer. They're not being expected to play against a man. Nobody's asking that question in the same way. And
No,
what it just further reinforces for me is the idea that we still see Major League Baseball as the pinnacle for everybody, and
right,
that's what you have to be accepted, and to
right,
be in the right place. And why does it
right,
have to be that? It's not like that in anything else that we look at. And
right.
Major League Baseball is great for what Major League Baseball is, but women's
Yeah,
baseball has always been different. It
right.
has developed differently. It
Yep.
has more. It's and so trying to pigeonhole it into what already exists is never going to
Go
allow the
Go
access that
watch
we're
a
talking about.
women's baseball game. Leslie and I sat in, I don't
Oh my
know
God,
how
it was.
many people were at the US Canada game in Thunder Bay last year. And I got to tell you, it still gives me chills. It was jam packed. It was
It
some of
was
the
awesome.
best baseball. I mean, go watch the game. And if you want to see the most beautiful baseball on the planet, watch the Japanese women play baseball.
Yeah.
It
Oh, and
is
then
like
to see the best fans in
ballet.
the world was Mexico. I mean, those fans
Yes.
came up to Canada, and
Oh
you
my
would have
God.
thought we were seeing the
Yeah.
world champion, like the biggest. They just were there, 100%
Yep.
excited in
Yeah.
support,
Yeah.
and that's all. That's all it has to be.
Yeah. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
I love Perry's point here.
Yeah,
That, and she's saying, even if it's getting the equal chance at sucking,
yeah.
they
Yes.
deserve that too.
Exactly.
Well,
Let them
because
That
try.
question.
boys get to
That
go
que-
sit out in right field and sit on the grass and pull the
that's
grass
right.
out, right?
That's right.
And so why can't a girl go do that?
Yeah.
It goes
Well,
back
it's
to
that
that, why does
question.
she have to be better than to even get a
Right.
chance?
Well, and it's that question that, um, when people would ask me, well, what's the point? Are women aren't going to make it to the major leagues. What is the statistics about the number of boys who play little league who make it to the major leagues?
Oh,
It's
it's minuscule,
minuscule. What's the difference?
right?
They still get to play. They get
Yeah.
to have that experience. They get to learn the best game on the planet.
And sometimes by playing, even if they are, and sometimes because, yeah, like my son, so I knew early I was never going to play anywhere because but I found another place in the game, and it opens up those opportunities. Sometimes it's just getting that chance to realize
Right.
and get a chance to play and see what you learn
Yep.
from it and where it takes
Yep.
you, whether it's the person who's the groundskeeper now or the athletic trainer or wherever it
Right.
is.
Right.
Right.
Those opportunities are starting to open up.
Yep.
And
They
so,
are.
and that's great. But when we have women's leagues, we're going to have all those opportunities there as well. And
Right.
those should be open to anybody that
That's
wants
right.
those as well. I mean, that's as equal, that's as inclusive as you can be, and it's just about everybody should be able to say, if I want to do that, then I can do it. And if I don't want to and I want to go do something, and that's great too. But
Yeah,
We just want
absolutely.
everybody to have that chance.
Right. But there should be no comparison.
Right.
You know, men are bigger, they're stronger, they're going to hit the ball farther, they're faster. I played on a co-ed softball team only once, and I swore I would never do it again, and I never did. It was horrendous. And it wasn't because it was in part because the men on the team assumed going in that they were better than the women. And nothing could have been further from the truth. Some of
Right.
us who played on that team played in world fast pitch tournaments. They, however, did not. And so, but it was too hard. It was too difficult to break through. They could not grasp that I was a good shortstop.
Right.
And so
Well,
that was my personal experience. I'm
yeah.
not
Well,
saying all
co-ed
men are
is
that way.
no, but co-ed is set up with the idea, right, for it to be that
Yeah.
way. Just because co-ed teams, when they're beyond just play,
Right.
are set up where you have to have a certain number of women on your team or you
That's
can't
right.
play.
Right.
And so you already created this sense that, oh, they're only here because we have to let
That's
them.
right.
So
That's
clearly they
right.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I
think
think
about
it's a
that.
bad idea.
I
I
mean, well,
think
it
co-ed
sends a
teams are
terrible
bad.
message. The only
Yeah.
reason you get to play is because we have to have a certain number.
That's right. That's right.
And
And someone brought up, I just kind of glanced and someone brought up softball. And I just want to say that I am a huge fan of softball.
oh,
I
yeah,
played
absolutely.
fast pitch softball. I love it, but it is not baseball. And because ESPN is showing softball, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Good for them. They're finally showing softball. And good for them that they're showing women's sports at all and not focusing on poker or cornhole. And so, you know, that's the frustrating thing. There are thousands and thousands of young women playing amazing sports, and they don't get the TV, the press. Well, that's starting to change a little bit. I don't know if any of you follow women's college basketball, but the push for women's Final Four tickets this year is higher than for the men's. And part of it is, yeah, they're being shown. Part of it
Right.
is there are a lot of superstars. It all comes together. But
Yep.
we can't say, well, they're doing it for this sport, therefore it's okay they don't do it for baseball.
Right.
And so softball and baseball are different. I love it. I love softball, and it doesn't mean if you play one you can't play the other. That's not true at all. But we can't just say, oh, well, okay, we have softball, so we need to just, because I have been told this point blank, well, you have softball, why don't you just shut up?
Right.
And no, that's, you know, we also have basketball, and I'm not going to shut up.
Right.
So,
Well, it goes back to, well, first of all, they're they're wonderful games. Softball is a wonderful game, but they're different games. And
yes,
to just and to just simply say, well, that's what's been said all along, right? Is that, well, you can go play softball. I'm sorry, that is exactly what we're talking about. That doesn't give people that opportunity. If they want to play baseball, then girls should be able to play just like any boy gets that chance, regardless of how good they're going to be. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's
We-
just they're just different. That's all. And
Right.
I just think we cannot say, oh, well, you have softball, or, you know, be happy you have softball. It's similar. No, it really isn't. You know, and I still don't understand this idea of you allow girls after a long fight to play Little League baseball. And then you get them to a certain age and you stick a ball in their hand that feels like throwing a gallon paint can, and they're supposed to take up that sport. And if they want to do that, that's fantastic. I support that. I am a big fan of college softball. Marshall University has a great team, but it's not the same. And we can't keep saying, yeah, but, and
Right.
that's dangerous. It's dangerous.
It's not a consolation prize.
No.
Exactly.
And that's not fair to softball.
It isn't
right?
that
That's right.
people are doing it as a backup plan, kind of. Well, I couldn't
And
do the other, so I'll go play
right.
softball.
And it's important to know softball was never created as a sport for women. It
Right.
was
That was
created by men in the winter to play indoors in Chicago. It was
Yep.
never meant to be
Oh,
a
really?
women's sport.
correct. It
Oh,
was to
they
give them a chance to practice inside. It was a bunch of firemen, and that was the idea.
wow.
And it Little League pushed it into that more than anything. The idea that we got to have two separate.
Yeah.
That so wow. I mean, I think that there's just an endless amount of things that we can learn from you. And really the next thing on the agenda needs to be to find some of those women you highlighted earlier with the dollars to start forming leagues of women baseball.
That's right.
Where's
Absolutely.
the F of this day and the
Yeah.
others that
Right.
Mhm.
can
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any last thoughts from you, Kat and Leslie? Anything else you want to put out there, inform us of, or speak to?
I
I
just
basic
wanted to say thank you, and
yeah.
we appreciate the opportunity. I love to, I mean, anytime we get the chance to chat about this kind of stuff, we're going to take it. So I just
Yeah.
appreciate you giving us the opportunity, and I appreciate everybody who's here listening and the great comments in the chat and things. And I can just say to people, get out and be a part of the game in whatever way that means, however small, however big you want that to be.
Right. I
Wow.
agree. And thank you so much. And to everyone listening, please go to our website. We have a Facebook. We're on Twitter. Look us up, see what we're doing. And Leslie and I will speak for Leslie on this. Leslie and I both are always, always willing to talk to people about what we do, about the IWBC. And it is a labor of love. And so we are happy to chat with people, and we thank you so very much. Having us on is, we could do this all day. So
And now that I have witnesses that you're willing to come back,
Absolutely.
you
always,
you
always
can guarantee that you will be back and back and back.
love it.
And
I love it.
it's
I
been
love
it's
it.
been really an honor, and to walk away knowing so much more, just speaking personally has me really fired up
Good,
to get more
good.
involved. and
That's
and and
excellent.
so I'm all in IWBC.
Love
And
it. Love
I
it.
was already there, but now there's more there.
I got
So,
it. That's great. That's
and
great.
yes, thank you everyone for joining and listening. And those of you that are watching after, pay attention to that little running ticker there. And all that information that I just put in the chat is there for you to engage with this remarkable group of women at the IWBC. And please throw them some support in any way that you can. And so Kat and Leslie, my gratitude, my unending infinite respect, and looking forward to picking up right where we left off.
That's great.
And so just thank you for your time. And so take care, everybody, stay safe and play ball.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody. Thanks, Lynn.
Bye.